functioning. He has his own house. He's able to hold down a job, but he's not really reached his potential. It's been a great frustration for my other brothers, and myself. But he's one, and this is something people ought to know, that even though people do have mental illness, many people don't want to seek treatment, or they seek treatment early on, and they may have been on a medication that didn't really work well, and they just kind of have run away from any type of help and treatment. And so while he's doing okay, he's not where he could be. But that was kind of one of the reasons why I got interested in the field in the first place, is because of my brother's situation and my frustration of not being able to help him.
Rebecca, you had your hand up.
Well, I was going to go back to your other question about what are we doing right. So did you want to finish this?
Well, no, we'll go back to that question now. But we've got a Twitter question.
Okay.
Who of the media here is changing the landscape for people living with mental illness?
Well, I think we are sitting with two of them right here on this panel. When I was thinking about what do I see people doing right, we have awarded over 165 journalists through our program. And I can point to so many of them who are impacting public policy related to mental health issues in states. The Oregonian, for example, the Seattle Times, certainly with the AJC and what Andy did at the AJC. That is creating real change in people's lives living with mental illnesses, exposing abuse in state hospitals, closing state hospitals, building community supports. So it's going beyond just addressing the stigma, but changing real structural forms of discrimination and abuse toward people with mental illnesses.
And also, I would hope, reporting on the way in which corporate America is or is not doing its job in terms of dealing with its employees. The idea that corporate America spends billions on ensuring its equipment, its computers, its buildings, but is corporate America spending enough on its mental health programs? Now, thankfully, thanks to many of you and to Rosalynn Carter, we were able to get past the Parity Act. It was dramatic in its insistence in the act that corporations provide mental health coverage as it does for a broken arm on it. But there's still a long ways to go, because there's some fairly important exceptions that are made to that. Ray?
I agree, and I think mental health parity is a step in the right direction, but it doesn't necessarily mean that people will have evidence-based, respectful, and I use that word very deliberately second, care that it's expedient. And so if somebody's in the middle of a crisis and they can see either that they make a suicide attempt or that they wait for 5 months to get help, it's going to be much more difficult for somebody, even with insurance, let alone the millions of Americans who don't have insurance, for whom the Affordable Care Act may or may not be that important, to access care.
I'd like for you to start making your way up to these two mics on each side for questions, and if you aren't coming up voluntarily, I'm going to recognize you involuntarily.
I have a question. So journalists, what we've heard so far, journalists have significant impact and influence on the readers and the listeners to whom they report. What sort of protocols are in place for journalists when it comes to integrity and ethics in terms of their reporting?